Why apps and Apple TVs matter to podcasters, even if you are an Android user. It's the Podcast Report, episode number 63. Show notes, links, conversation, and more at thepodcastreport.com/63.
It's the Podcast Report with Paul Colligan. And here's Paul.
So first, the big idea. The future of podcasting cannot be the podcast app. Hey, this is Paul Colligan, podcaster, author. Right now, my big book, How to Podcast 2015, is doing very, very well. Having a lot of fun with this. I've been part of podcasting since the beginning. I love this industry. I have since day one. You are a podcaster looking to make your podcast a real business or do real business because of your podcast. You are the passionate because you want to take this so far that this begins to pay your bills. I love that about you. This is a massive plane, not a deep one. I will never hit, the top 10 podcasts in X or that type of thing, but I don't want to. My goal is to help you, the podcaster, again, make your podcast a real business or do more real business as a result of your podcast. So I spoke earlier when I hit the recording button, and we'll set up why this episode's a little bit different, but this is Podcast Month. And if you are listening during Podcast Month, definitely visit podcastmonth.com, sign up, get the gifts every day in September, a free gift for podcasters, www.podcastmonth.com. Now, I'm recording today's episode on Periscope. And if you're listening to this in the podcast stream, you're getting an audio recording of what happened at Periscope. If you head out to thepodcastreport.com/63, you'll get a video. It's just my face, nothing that exciting. And I will be responding as questions and comments come up sometimes. We'll see how distracted that makes me, that type of thing. But I really wanted to follow up what we chatted about last week on episode 62 of the Podcast Report and how we could use something like Periscope or Meerkat or Blab to do a content creation moment and then enjoy the crowd. And, I've got someone right now here on Periscope giving me hearts, which gives me a good feeling in my heart, which makes me think, maybe we'll do more of this. Yes, the orientation's wrong. This is up, down. I know Periscope's fixed that and that type of thing, but the fact of the matter is that wasn't what I want to experiment with today. I'll replay at the website, thepodcastreport.com/63. One of my inspirations is actually Dan Class over at the Bitterest Pill. Dan has often has done his monologues recently using live streaming video. And I think it's a connection with the audience that you don't necessarily get elsewhere. I will use this content somewhere else. Any content I create on a live show, this or Blab or that type of thing, I will always listen and I will always produce and I will always place somewhere else. It's just kind of my model here. So why this topic? Now, what's interesting here is I've got this on my Apple TV, or I've got this on my Mac Pro, and I'm already hearing a fan begin to go because I kind of blocked the airport here. So I'm going to go back a little bit on this screen and give my Apple Pro a little bit of fan, or else I might just do that whole, I don't know. I hate to think that I, caused this thing to overheat. So there we go. Those of you on the video, not that bad, but good fun there. So why this topic? Apple made a big announcement last week. And the big announcement was not the new iPhone. The big announcement was not Apple Music or anything like that. Actually, the big announcement was a little thing that they said, that the future of TV is apps. That they believe the future of TV is apps. Now, Apple's gone through really version 1, 2, 3, and 4. I have all of them. I've enjoyed Apple TV, but the new version of Apple TV is different because the whole interface, the whole design is apps. Just like your iPhone has an app, just like your iPad has an app, your Apple TV is going to have an app store. And what's interesting, inside of the Apple infrastructure, you'll be able to do the type of universal app where, you buy an app for your iPhone and there's an app version for it on the store as well, which is really interesting. And I could buy one version for when I'm on the road, and then when I go home, I can watch it because I bought the same version, that type of thing. It's very, very, very interesting. This affects us as podcasters because if the future of phone is apps and the future of tablets is apps, and the future of television is apps, and the future of our computers is apps, obviously the distribution of all content is coming across on apps. And, we as podcasters have, the podcast app inside of iOS, or we may have the Stitcher app or something like that. But gosh darn it, we're probably going to need more of an app. Now, why? Apple isn't the only game in town. There's Android, there's Microsoft, there's those guys. Yes, there is. But the fact of the matter is Apple has always set the future. Apple has never been, very seldom has been the first person in the game. When they did the iPhone, there were already smartphones. They were lousy, but there were already smartphones. When they did the tablet, there were already tablets. They were lousy, but they already did the tablets. When they jumped into TV, there were already people doing that, and gosh darn it, they're not lousy. The Roku box is very good, app-based. The Amazon Fire Stick is very good, app-based. And so they've jumped in the app, but they set the future. And the future is more important. Again, this is bigger than the Apple or the Stitcher or, any of the other apps, because it's now the expectation, that any entity is going to have an app. It's now the reality that any entity is going to have an app. And there we go. Now, I've got some links. If you head to the podcastreport.com/63. Now, at the time of this recording, the links aren't live, or the time of this live recording, the links aren't live, but we'll get those up tonight. But what's interesting is we've got a link to the fact that Americans now are consuming more content on apps than on television already. They don't even have the Apple TV yet. More apps, more time content on apps than in front of television, which is amazing. And, this is what we got to do. So Apple made the big announcement. This affects us all because the standard is that Apple sets the future. And then one thing that's interesting, one thing that's amazing is that individual downloaded apps weren't the original plan for the iPhone. There is video out there of Steve saying, we're not going to do apps. We're not going to do an SDK. We're going to do what he called web apps. And I've got video at the site as well where you can see where he kind of explained what the difference was, but they weren't going to give people the ability to program apps. And then they changed their mind. And I've got a link to a video where you can see Steve going, this is what people want. We're looking at the numbers. We're looking at the issues. And the fact of the matter is, this is what people want. I want to consume more on an app than anything else. These days somebody hands me a book and I'm like, oh no, another book, another piece of dead tree. But the fact of the matter is, if I can listen to it, watch it on Kindle or get an app by itself, it starts to get interesting. So we're setting our time in apps. The future is going to apps. Communication is going to apps. Television is going to apps. Media is going to apps. We need to go to app. What do we learn? Well, number one, Apple sets the future. And I said that. You got to get past the Apple app or the Stitcher app or whatever hub app you're dealing with, SoundCloud. I don't do SoundCloud. Any of the others. Can't think of them right now. That's what happens when you go live. Realize that you are a destination. Ubiquity is the new exclusivity. I've been sharing with that concept for a long time. You are the destination. You are the content, and content deserves an app. Right now on the Apple TV, we're seeing apps for things like HBO and we're seeing apps for things like Showtime, but soon we're going to start seeing apps for shows. Know you, me, that. You are a destination. You are a media entity. You are a content creator, so you need an app. What do we do with this? Well, we start exploring. We need to start looking at what are the good apps for all content people, not just podcasters, but obviously there's podcasters out there that have got great apps. We need to explore that. We need to start sharing that. We need to start thinking about that. We need to start conversing about that. And we can do that on this website if we want to. We can do this up against the Podcast Report Twitter feed or that type of thing. I've got comments on this episode, thepodcastreport.com/63. Feel free to as you explore, share your information, help us get more and go from there. And the next thing we got to stop doing is we got to stop calling these things podcasts. Now, my problem is, of course, I'm the Podcast Report. So it's a podcast about podcasts. But man, most of you out there simply need to stop calling this a podcast. It's still a podcast. I'm not saying podcasts are going away, but realize once it goes to app, and I've been speaking this in other episodes, once it goes to app, once it goes to CD, once it goes to digital distribution, especially premium, that type of thing, not everybody thinks of it as a podcast. And so, if you refer to it as a podcast and they don't realize that podcasts have different shapes, you just confuse them. And I've said this before, there's two types of people out there, those who know what a podcast is and don't care, and those who don't know what a podcast is and don't want to be confused. So how do we react? Start exploring, start sharing, start researching, and stop calling this a podcast. All right, where I'm going. I'm exploring app opportunities deeper than I ever have before. As a matter of fact, right off I get off of this live cast, I'm going to my bookkeeper to make sure that all the paperwork is in order for me to begin my process as an app developer and that kind of thing. Rich Moore wants to know what Adam Curry says about changing the name. It's not changing the name, Rich. It's just that the content's bigger than the name. Okay. Your content is bigger than a podcast. Your content is a podcast. Your content is a monologue. I mean, right now, this is a Periscope that's going to become a podcast. I'm not changing the name. Yes, and call it your show. As a matter of fact, call it you. You know, it's the Ann Hare Hour, that kind of thing. Rich says this makes a lot of sense. Thank you. I appreciate that. Maybe we'll do a whole episode on that in the future. So I'm exploring app opportunities. I'm going to be bringing on app developers in future episodes of the Podcast Report. We're definitely going to bring on Rob from Podcast 411. They've got a great program that we'll be taking a look at. I'll probably be experimenting with that. The guys over at Spreaker have an app. I've never seen it in action, but we do have a connection over there. We'll probably bring them on, probably bring on some other app developers, but go through that. And then I'm personally exploring my options. I've had an app before. As a matter of fact, I think the Marketing Online Live app and the developer I dealt with, that it's still online and still out there for the world. So sigh. But the fact of the matter is we're exploring my options as well. What you can do, you can start considering apps as a distribution model for you, that type of thing. And of course, if you are in Podcast Month, and again, www.podcastmonth.com, I've got a lot of additional content, related there. Rich Moore wants to know if it's called an appcast. No, it doesn't need a name. It's the show. Okay. My kids are watching Dancing with the Stars right now. They love Dancing with the Stars. It's not Dancing with the Stars, the TV show. It's not Dancing with the Stars, the Hulu experience, which is what they do. It's not Dancing with Stars, the DVD set, which I guess it's probably released on DVD. It's not Dancing with the Stars, the Disney vehicle, which apparently it is, having the episodes that I've seen. They just watch Dancing with the Stars. It doesn't have a name after it. So Rich and Alan and Ann and the different people who've been commenting on here, you don't need a name after it. It's your show. And maybe it doesn't even need the word show after it. Michael Hyatt's doing a lot of interesting things. Michael Hyatt's the virtual mentor, and how Michael Hyatt does this. It's not the virtual mentor scope. It's not the virtual mentor podcast. It's the virtual mentor. So you consider production, get inside of Podcast Month. So that's the content for today. A couple things. For those of you who are watching this for the first time, and those of you who are listening to the podcast for the first time, lots of stuff socially. I like to interact socially. If you head out to the podcastreport.com/Twitter, or the podcastreport.com/Facebook, or the podcastreport.com/pick your social media option here. We've got social for you. And if you want to react, we'd love to have you react there. The blog is up as well, thepodcastreport.com/63. Feel free to go there and leave comments and that type of thing. We can build from the community. I've got a bunch of links over at thepodcastreport.com/63. I've got a link to the podcast book, How to Podcast 2015. I've got a link to Podcaster Cart, our e-commerce solution. Got a link to SMS to Opt-in, our SMS solution, our Patreon solution, legalpodcastmusic.com. Today, podcasting is returning to Blab, which is going to be interesting. That should be fun. The Apple TV keynote, I've got a link to that. You need to watch it. You need to hear what they said about that. I've got a link to the more apps than TV issue, the fact that we're consuming more on apps than TV. And then the video where Steve changed his mind. I was able to dig that up, and you can see where Steve moved from web apps to regular apps and why he did it. Very well thought out. And then just the other thing is people are going to apps more than they are search. People don't want to search anymore. They just want the app that tells them what to do. And again, for us as content, we're going to do that. Now I'm going to finish up the show, and then I'll stick around and answer a few questions if anybody has any. I know there were a few that popped up that I wasn't able to see. But this is the Podcast Report. If you're watching this on Periscope, it's not going to be a regular thing on Periscope, at least right now. You definitely want to subscribe. So you go to the podcastreport.com/iTunes. or the podcastreport.com/Stitcher, or the podcastreport.com/Pocket Casts, or TuneIn, or Spreaker, or iHeartRadio, or Overcast, or any of those. And then you can follow the show. You can subscribe to the show. And then every time a new episode of the show is released, you get it updated automatically. There's no spam. There's no problems. It's not going to be delivered, that type of thing. And I do release this every Tuesday. The day of the week might change. I might miss one. Haven't missed one yet. Today's episode's coming out a little bit later, but that's because we wanted to do this. Would love to have you. If you'd like to email me, I'm at thepodcastreport@outlook.com. And if you would love, a couple of you said you like learning from me and whatnot. iTunes reviews are always wonderful. Thepodcastreport.com/iTunes. Stitcher reviews, thepodcastreport.com. Stitcher as well works great. So that is the episode. I'm going to pause for a second, then I'll answer questions only on Periscope. And one more time, just in case you missed it, you can grab the video from this presentation, and it will be the entirety of it, the stuff I did at the beginning as well as the Q&A at the end. You can pick that up at thepodcastreport.com /63.